Hello, and thank you for joining us for Change Your Chats. I'm Grant Venable, Director of Change at Be the Change Volunteers. Today, we have our friend Yak Nak returning to the podcast to share with us about his experience traveling to India with Be the Change Volunteers. Yak is an MD, MPH candidate in his final year of medical school at the University of Missouri Columbia School of Medicine. He is also doing a Master of Public Health at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. This year, as part of his required practicum in public health, Yak decided to travel to India with Be the Change Volunteers to share his knowledge about public health, but also to do some field research and learn about public health and the practices that they use in rural parts of India. Yak, welcome to Change Your Chats, man.
I'm so happy to be back.
Well, dude, I'm happy to have you back, and I'm glad that you made time for this today. I know you're busy. You're in DC right now.
Yep, I'm in
Yeah.
DC.
You are moving around the globe. So Yak, I just want to dig in. This is your first time. This was your first trip to India. You'd never been there before. When you got to India, you got off the plane at the Delhi airport, which is one of the largest airports in the world. If people don't know that, check it out. It's huge. And you had a tighter connection than we did. So we were actually outside the airport, but we all met up in the airport terminal. Yak, we flew to Bagdogra, India, which is in West Bengal. Now, Bagdogra is a unique airport. It is an Air Force base and it gets some domestic flights every day. So when you land there, you see some military equipment, you see camouflage towers. It's not like landing in a normal airport. But that was really when we got to Bagdogra and got off the plane, that was you stepping into India, real India. So
Mhm.
just share with me about that experience.
Yeah, of course. I'm super grateful to be on the podcast again and grateful to have had this experience. But when we were getting to Bagdogra, I think even before we landed, I remember you, Raul, and Tato, the four of us sitting in those little aisle seats right next to each other. And I remember you like hitting us in the shoulder and telling us, look outside the window. And it's the Himalayas are right there. And
Oh, right.
you're like, they're never this clear when you typically fly here. And then you warned us and told us when we land, you're going to see the military base and all the military equipment and everything, which we did. Then we hopped off, walked on the tarmac, and we walked in. And after getting our chai, that our beloved chai that we learned to fall in love with, the
Yeah.
first person we saw when we left the Bagdogra airport was Gulshan and his wife and two drivers are waiting for us. And
Yep.
right away, I got an intro into India hospitality by meeting Gulshan and the rest of the group. So my initial impression was, at first, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Africa when we were getting to the airport and working through things. But after that, I just felt like an amazing energy and welcoming environment when we were in Bagdogra.
Yeah. Yeah, India, as any changer who knows me will tell you, is one of my favorite places to go. I've been going there for many years, and same way. India is kind of an explosion of the senses, and for me, it's an explosion in the best way possible. I love the sights, I love the sounds, I love the music, I love, I don't like crowds here in the U.S. I don't like to go to, crowded concerts or theme parks, but in India, it doesn't bother me at all. Maybe it's because I'm 2 feet taller than everybody over there, but in India, I just love that energy. Exactly what you said. There's a special energy in India, and it's the hospitality and everything about it. So we take off from Bagdogra, going to Assam in cars. We weren't able to get on the train going, and so it was a little rougher ride. But just tell us about that car ride, man. We went
Yeah.
through the West Bengal Assam jungle, which part of it is a national park.
Yep. So going through the jungle, we got in the car, 6 hour train ride, right? At this point, it's like over 20 hours of travel. But that energy of getting there to the Bagdogra airport, it just seemed like I already had a nights of rest. I'm energized and ready to go. And we're driving down, and this is when I found out so much about India on this drive. And I'm glad that we didn't take the train down as much because on the drive with you in the back seat, you're almost like a tour guide going through every single spot and location in the jungle in West Bengal. We were able to see the tea farms of Assam. We were able to see just how people work, the farming. I don't know. I feel like on the drive down, I really was able to take in that this is the beautiful countryside of India and made me really settle into saying, okay, it's time to focus on the community we're going to, the people that we're going to be impacting. And I think going down that drive for 6 hours really allowed me to just observe. No talking, nothing, just using my ears and my sights to really take in India.
Yeah, even stopping off just to use the restroom and get some Coca-Colas to stay awake. You got to see some roadside stores. That's their life every day. And it's so different than walking into a quick trip here in the US. And so that was great. We also nobody got to see the elephants, but there were elephants off the side of one of the
Yeah.
roads. And so all these cars had stopped to see them. So
Hmm.
the place that we went just has elephants walking around, walking across the streets.
With the
um,
watchtowers, like the
yep,
elephant
yep.
watchtowers. Yeah.
The communities have watchtowers, and someone's job is to hang out up there in case the elephants come out to go through and eat all their crops. They'll come out with firecrackers and pots and pans and scare the herd of elephants off. So it's a totally different place, man. I mean, there's nothing like that here. So we drive. It's a long drive, and we finally get to Grace English Medium School in Balamanjora, Assam, India. And just tell us about, there's always a great welcome there. So, and if you haven't been, you don't know what to expect. Tell us what you experienced.
The welcomes for BTCV, they're not so different from places that you've gone for the trips that I've been able to go a few times. But after that 6 hour drive, tired, the sun is setting, and you're walking in, and as soon as you open the gates of the door, the whole school is there in line. There's a team. There's the dance team that's there, seventh and eighth graders, I believe. The principal's there. There's music out of the big speaker that's happening. And mind you, the jet lag is starting to hit now and the sun is setting.
Yep.
But once again, that energy that those students had while we were walking in, there's nothing that always like beats that feeling of being welcomed that much. At a certain point, it's almost kind of embarrassing because like all eyes on you. But when we're walking in and just seeing how excited all the students were, seeing how they prepared for this dance and welcoming us to their community, you could tell that, this is just not another day or that we're just passing through. It really showed that there's a connection between us and the community. And this is just them saying, hello, welcome back.
Right. Yeah. I love getting welcome to the schools. It's one of the most special experiences, and it definitely brings home that appreciation for what we're trying to achieve in partnership with the schools. So, Yak, you, as part of your public health degree, you have to do a practicum. Tell us about your public health and why you chose to add public health, even if you want to
Mhm.
explain a little bit about that. You're going to be an MD, but you wanted to add public health. What gave you that desire, and what was the practicum about?
Of course, of course. So, as you said earlier in the introduction, I'm a final year med student. Typically, the path is, you go through your 4 years of medical school, and around second year or third year, I started to get, with all the work that I'm doing in education and orthopedic surgery, a lot of it revolves around global health and global education. So a lot of my mentors, Dr. Cook being one of them, told me that you should consider a master's in public health. So I applied, got into a few schools, but the school that spoke most to me is Bloomberg Hopkins. And there's a way to get that degree for a year between your third and fourth year. So third year, you finish your clinicals. And now I'm finishing my master's in public health. And I return in fourth year to apply to residency and asked to be taken on as an orthopedic resident at a hospital. So that's kind of like the idea of why I wanted to get my master's. Secondly, there's a few requirements to get your MPH in the accelerated program. Besides the classes, one of them is completing your thesis project or your capstone project, and the other one is you're required to do a minimum of 100 hours of practical work or service work. Most students work in Baltimore. They go to like a soup kitchen, or they also can take classes that fills that requirement, and various other service projects in Baltimore. But me, um, I knew that I wanted to have an impact and lean into the things of why I went to public health school. A portion of that was global education. So I went back to the tried and true Be the Change volunteers, and I was able to work with Grant to bring together a practicum because I came to him with the idea and the paperwork and saying, hey, like I know the India trip is happening. I'm pretty interested in hand hygiene and preventable measures of infections in communities, especially in like low and middle income communities. And then a lot of the paperwork was balanced on three things. Number one, what are the objectives that you're going to complete? Number two, how are you going to track the hours? And then number three, doing a reflection at the end, knowing that you learned. So after going back and forth between Grant, Bloomberg, and I, we were able to get the hours down, decide on the schools that we're going to, and then most importantly, the main focus is teaching hand hygiene to these communities in India. So at least, at the very minimum, at least one student or one person will take the preventable measure of washing their hands so they can prevent getting sick. And that's one of the biggest goals in public health. And that's one of the goals in my practicum. And I think we accomplished that.
Yeah, man. I will tell you, you definitely put in more than the needed 100 hours. You probably had close to that in preparation for this because you were super prepared and the presentations you did were super engaging. I'll just tell you when you were like, yeah, we're going to teach them how to wash their hands. I thought, oh, how hard can it be? Everybody knows how to wash their hands. You know, you do it for 30 seconds, sing happy birthday. Everybody knows that. Well, not everybody knows that. And that's why global public health is so important. We take for granted what we learned in our schools and from our access to healthcare here, we take that for granted. When we go over there, it's not common sense knowledge. And I'll just be honest, I'll be vulnerable here. I was not washing my hands as well as I should have been until I saw Yak's presentation on hand washing and why. That was kind of the other cool thing about this was you didn't just go into the schools and say, wash your hands because you know you need to. You dug into the science behind it which was really honoring to the teachers. They loved that, and to the students. Talk to us about, all right, so talk to us about the school in Assam and being there and doing the presentations, talking to the kids. You met with some teachers. You spent some time with the head of school. And then after that, we're going to talk about home visits.
So after having that introduction into the community the night that we arrived, um, right away, we were greeted to go to the rooms, the dorm area where we had rooms that were set up for us. Meals were being prepared before we were getting ready to go to bed and going over the plans. And I think that's when things started to continue to settle for me. I was like, wow, number one, the school is so expansive grace. There's dormitories, there's bathrooms that are set this way. There's almost like a multiple story classroom building area. I was like, I have so many questions, but it was nighttime. So after going to bed there for the night, eating and everything, we woke up in the morning. And that's when we were able to get like a full tour of the school and learn about the history, learning that it started years ago from bamboo sticks in the classroom to now a 5 story or multiple story. You can correct me if I'm wrong, like 5 story building. Thinking about the stories and how proud the school, the teachers, the principals, Gulshan, going from one bamboo classroom all the way to this 5 story building. I couldn't even imagine the history or the growth that had to occur there. So I was initially extremely impressed by that. And secondly, when we talk about students, on our first day when the school assembly was occurring, I had my white coat on, we were able to go through everything we needed to do. I was blown away by how teachers and education is held on such a high pedestal in ways that I often forget or appreciate when I'm in the US. But going there and seeing every morning they are there for a morning assembly. They're in lines and rows. The teachers in the front, announcements are being made. The Pledge of Allegiance, the national anthem is sung. Their songs are sung. It's like everyone is prepared, almost like in a materialist, like in a military type of way, prepared to take on the education of the day. So seeing all the students out in lines, wearing their green uniform, ready for the day and ready to learn, blew me away. And at the same sense, I was like, this is the reason why I'm here. They're this prepared. They're ready to learn. The least that I can do as someone that's visiting here and teaching something is to be able to perform as best as possible because that's what they deserve.
And let me paint the picture for the listeners real quick. So there's 800 students at this school. 200 of them live on campus as boarding students. So this is a huge crowd of students lined up, very organized. And we saw that even with it was a very small school with 100 kids, all the way up to a big school with 800 kids. But yeah, there's some pictures that are going to be on our website and on our newsletter of the morning assembly. If you're listening to this, check those out because you will see exactly what Yak was talking about. All
Hmm.
right, I'm sorry for interrupting you. Go ahead and continue telling us about doing your work at Grace English Medium School.
Of course, of course. So after the assembly and everyone goes to their classrooms, I was like, okay, it's time to do the work. It's time to teach. It's time to interact with all the students. So, we started off. It was me. Gulshan's also prepared. Like I was also prepared. Gulshan had the buckets ready for me. He had someone to walk with me with a towel, the soap, holding the posters. And we started at the very youngest grade, like kindergarten, all the way up to eighth grade. So we had to go class to class to class to class to class. A lot of hand washing, a lot of bucket carrying. And at first, starting with the kindergartners, it was like, okay, how can I teach this so they can be impacted? Because it's going to be different when I go to higher grade students, right? So we were able to all get in rhythm right away. You walk in the classroom, all the students kind of stand up and they're like, "Good morning, sir." It took me a while to get used to that, but how excited they were going to each classroom to learn and listen, be open to the opportunity to take in new knowledge. And we were able to teach hand hygiene. They were interacting. They were able to, I can tell in their eyes that they were really learning and wanting to continue this practice. So we did that from grade to grade to grade. And mind you, from each classroom, it's just not the students, it's also the teacher that is there. And they're standing up there next to me because they're part of the teaching process. And it's funny that some of the teachers, like you said, Grant, like they came up after the fact and said, "We know these things, but I didn't know them to this detail about hand washing." So it goes to show like sometimes the most simplistic things or simple things that we think can also be complex. After doing all that and teaching each of the classrooms, there were also assemblies at the end of the day, more casual within the church. So at the church, the students were aligned, would sing, they would do prayers and various other activities. And after the whole day of going to each classroom and talking and everything, we were taking some rest right before dinner, and the principal comes and knocks on my door, and she goes, "Hey, Yak, if you don't mind, I don't know if you're too tired. Like, would you like to come talk to the students? They're all waiting for you if you don't mind." I was like, okay, I have two ways to respond now. I can lay here and hop out, or I can get up and be as energized as them in the community because
Yeah,
they were also there all day
yeah. And for
listening to what.
listeners, Yak has just talked for 8 hours, so he's jet lagged, he's tired, and they want more.
Yep. So I know I'm there for a limited time, and when's the next time that I'll be able to come back? It's like the least I can do is show more energy, the same way that they have more energy. So we're able to go talk more. Almost had like a conversational style in front of the students about different things of health. And there's two questions that I remember sitting up there. Was one, the principal asked, a lot of our students feel oftentimes unmotivated or lazy. What are some things that they could do to prevent that? And they were all ears. Actually, the principal didn't ask me, a student asked me that. She was like an eighth grader. And I shared, and I was being vulnerable as well, saying, sometimes I feel unmotivated or lazy to do things. But oftentimes, once you do the action or once you start moving, the feelings of motivation and being unmotivated goes out of the way. You can still do what you need to do. That it's only in your head that you're unmotivated or lazy, or you actually are physically that. But once you start moving and going through that feeling, the motivation comes later. So all the students really like that. But my other favorite question was there's like a young 5-year-old, 6-year-old who stood up and he was like, "Are you married?" And in the whole entire place was like laughing so hard. I think we were laughing for 5 minutes collectively.
Yep.
But we
Kids
go
are
on.
kids.
Yeah, kids are kids.
Doesn't
So
matter
we
what
go on
continent
and
you're on, kids are kids.
exactly. So we were able to connect, bond more outside of just the hand hygiene. We were able to connect in this space to learn about each other in the community. Um, and lastly, a going away party at Grace. They prepare their dances, the goodbyes, the farewells, and they expect us to dance and provide things. So we had
Very
a
luckily.
great, luckily we had a great dancer in our group. His name is Raul, and a lot of the students, they don't forget. Raul was there 2 years ago, I believe, and he
Yep.
did this famous, I think the students called it this famous Mexican hat dance.
Yep.
And multiple students brought it up the entire time. But finally came the night and time that Raul had to do his dance and perform. And he elegantly did it, and the students were besides himself. They absolutely loved it.
I was in the next building over, and I don't mean next door, next door. I was, a ways from the building, and I knew the minute Raul got up to do the Mexican hat dance because you could hear the roaring thunder of applause and cheering from those kids. Man, you can only with BTCV you go to rural, middle of nowhere, remote Assam, India, out in the jungle, and have a first generation Mexican American guy with you who's able to do the Mexican hat dance. That just is a BTCV thing. You can't make that stuff up, you
Not
know?
at all. Not at all.
So yeah, before we left Gracie M, we had extra time there for you to go and do home visits as part of the practicum. I didn't attend those, but I did attend the home visits when we went back to West Bengal. But just tell me a bit about the home visits and what you gathered from those home visits in Assam, because part of what you wanted to do was some field research, some interviews, see how people live, what they do for a living, where they wash their hands, where they use the restroom. Tell us what you learned in Assam, what you saw.
So even though this whole entire practicum was educational on my side of teaching, I was also a learner wanting to learn from the community. Because if we think about things of behavior change, like hand washing, when it comes into health, you also have to understand the different factors that go into play. And that's kind of where my research and home interviews came into play. It'd be one thing if I'm talking in the school, talking about washing your hands in the school, so on and so forth. But that's not the only place that these students are. Some of them go home. The majority of them go home. Are they continuing these practices at home? Are these behaviors and these habits being built by their parents, by their siblings, so on and so forth? You want to make sure, the idea is like to make sure that it's a holistic behavior change. So we tackled it within the school. Let's go understand within the home by doing interviews, what are the habits that are going on at home when it comes to water hygiene, hand hygiene. And that's a lot of what the interviews were. And the reason why I went as a listener and engaging and asking these questions is because who am I to go into someone's home and tell them that you should wash your hands? This is what you should do. You should use soap. That's going into becoming a listener and understanding, okay, what do you understand about hand hygiene? What are the current behaviors that occur here? And I get to hear from the parents. I get to hear from the grandparents. I get to hear from the students themselves. And then after that, we can have a dialogue and a discussion of saying, so this is what we taught in school. This is how we want to continue the hand hygiene practices and water hygienes at home, making sure to take vigorous notes because everything that we should do and something that Be the Change always pushes is long-term relationships and sustainability. So I was
Yeah.
taking those notes and doing the research is because I know this is not the last time I'll be here. So I would get to brainstorm, do the research, and come back and provide better solutions. So that's a common theme of all the home interviews that we're able to do.
So yeah, when you went to their homes, describe the homes for the students who live in Assam, because these are not like houses you would see in the Midwest in the United States. They live a very different lifestyle there.
Yeah, so I'll tell you about the first home because
Okay.
this is the first home visit that we did in Assam. So, we pulled in with our cars to the driveway, not driveway, but like to the entrance of the house. And right away, the house is snuggled between farmland and land where there's growing crops. Um, there were animals are also there that there because you come to realize really quickly it's a farming family,
Hmm.
right? And then if you look at the house right away when everyone's coming outside, there's the veranda area, the front area where everyone collects, eats, and everything that was all set up. But the house was also up on stilts slightly because they're concerned with water going under. There's a
Yeah.
well that the family had where they had their daily water from, or so on and so forth. Um, and the houses are not built in like singular homes. There's also homes that are kind of connected because it's a whole entire family unit. It's just not the parents and the students. There's also the grandma that's there, the grandparents,
Yeah.
even even like the aunts or sisters. They all live in this community to collectively work on the farm, raise the kids, all together. But one of the biggest takeaways is that in Assam, it was more rural and a lot more farming land and farmers. And that's stayed true for the entirety of all the home business that we did in Assam. A lot of the a lot of the fathers were farmers
Yeah.
or work with their hands.
Yeah. So we wrapped up in Assam and we did one of my favorite things to do, take the train in India. I like it for two reasons. One, it's a very smooth ride. It's not a bumpy road for 6 hours. And so you can catch some Z's on the train, but also it is just the quintessential way to see India. I love that the vendors come through selling stuff the whole time and that you just have a great view, a changing view out the window. Strangers will sit down and talk to you.
Yeah.
I love the trains in India. It's not for everybody, I know that, but just we took the train back to West Bengal, got off the train, and we got a night in a hotel, which was great because we had been sleeping out at the school, and they made us very comfortable at the school, I should say. Anybody who decides to go to India with us, it is a comfortable stay at the school. Um, but the next morning we got up early and we headed to the next school, FIAM Academy, which is on the West Bengal Bihar border, and it is it is one of the poorest areas in India that we were heading out to. Tell us about arriving at FIM Academy in its new location, new school, totally different than where you'd just been.
So right before we pull up to FIM Academy, we passed this public school that was there. And for some reason they weren't in session or nothing was really going. It seemed like in the public school, like there wasn't students there or anything. But we right next door, a little bit further down the road, we went to FIAM and
Yeah.
they had this nice, beautiful black gate that was there. We walked in and right away you could tell the difference between Grace, um, when we were at Grace to now being in FIAM. They're very humble in their classrooms. They're still under construction. Um, there is a few classrooms that are present. There's a new office that's being built, but you could see the development and the growth that's happening at FIAM. And it's a lot smaller school. So same welcome, same introduction, same offering of tea was given. There was no difference in being welcome and appreciated of being there. There's just a smaller amount of students that are there, but they all still lined up in a row. They all were ready in their sharpest uniform, ready to learn and take on the day.
Yeah, the backstory on FIAM is this is again one of the poorest areas in India. So the government schools are not functioning appropriately. Teachers are not paid on time. They are not paid well enough, and so when they don't get paid, they don't come to work. And so there can be months where the teachers just don't show up to work because they didn't get paid. And you and I wouldn't show up to work if we didn't get paid either, right? So because of that, the students suffer. So what parents began to do was send their kids to FIAM, which actually started in a small warehouse. You got to see that space. And this is not like an Amazon warehouse, folks. This is a dark tree growing in the middle of it, shabby brick building that they started FIAM, and eventually they had more students enrolled than they had seating for. So they got some land and they started the school in these metal classrooms, these metal shack classrooms that are still there. They're still using in part, excuse me. But that is the backstory at FIAM. The parents want their kids to get educated, so they pay school fees. And that's how the teachers at FIM are paid, is through a fee structure. And this is a school of about 120 kids now, so it is smaller. But tell us about just your experience there. I know you had a special experience at FIAM. You really enjoyed that.
Yeah. Um, I think one thing that you said in the meeting when we were with the principals at Supriya is that you said there's different things that changers feel drawn to and feel passionate about.
Yep.
Um, and you were able to share yours going from, dirt classrooms to concrete form
Yep.
classrooms. And when I was going to FIAM, I think I finally found like the deep passion. And it was being able to connect with younger kids and have them really be excited on learning, being excited to be able to come the next day to school, to be excited to be in the school environment during recess and playing and all that. I think that was one of my biggest realizations there. And what I really enjoy about FIM and why it's probably my favorite school to visit is even though they were humble, they still had that excitement about learning. They still had that excitement while they're outside playing. They still had that excitement and respect for teachers. And also speaking of the teachers also still had that excitement. They also wanted to learn. They're using the best resources they can to serve their students as best as possible. And it showed. So I think the connection with the students, the connections with the teachers, the connection uh, with the principal, they were just all bought into this idea of saying, I know this is exactly not what we have right now in the moment, but we're chasing the dream, we're chasing the growth, we're chasing what we deserve and we can imagine just serving these students with the best education. And I think I realized all that being there.
Yeah, I love the FIAM story. The similar thing about all the schools that we work with in India is they are all community driven. They are not government schools. They are private, community funded schools. The school back at Grace EM, the community put up that large building. BTCV provided the funding to do the finishing work on it, but the community did that. FIAM, the community put up the funding to get the school started and going. And really, it's only because of the generosity of legacy donors, what BTCB calls legacy donors, that we're able to work with FIAM because both those schools applied and we could only say yes to one. But because of generous legacy donors, we've been able to support building classrooms at FIAM. Those brick and mortar classrooms that are getting put up right now wouldn't be there without the generosity of legacy donors. So special shout out, special thanks to legacy donors because
Mm-hmm.
you make projects for kids that Yak's talking about possible. They wouldn't be possible otherwise. So yeah, you did another full day talking to the kids at FIM, and those kids, I have a great photo. I reached in a window of a classroom from the back of the classroom, and there were kids literally like knees and hands on desks so they could see over the other kids because you were up front doing the hand washing experiment, and they just were, like you said, they were hungry for education. They were excited about what you were doing. It's a really cool photo, but these kids really wanted it, and their parents want it too. You got to do some home visits there, engage directly with the parents in that community as well. So then we headed back to Bagdogra. And that is a special school that we work with in Bagdogra, Emmanuel International Academy. It is part of my changer story. My parents, Jan and Gary Venable, are the co-founders of that school. It's been there for a very long time. But BTCV was recently able to put the finishing touches on it by adding a roof to it a few years ago. And so that school, Emmanuel International Academy, is really a school in the city. And so it has more upper middle class students in it. It's got nicer classrooms. It's got full laboratories, a full computer lab. So it's nothing like the schools that you visited in rural India. Just tell us a bit about because I could tell everybody my experience.
Yeah.
You were blowing the roof off that place. Everybody was really amazed by your presentation. But tell us about your experience going to Emmanuel International Academy.
So going to Emmanuel International Academy was kind of similar to all the other schools, and you're being welcomed by the whole entire community.
Yep.
But from my experience, after first getting there, is that this change from hands-on front of the classroom interactions and mostly speaking to now we're getting there early so we could set up the brand new PowerPoint that they built in the auditorium that they have with this new roof next to the biology lab, next to the physics labs, and next to like the geography labs and their dance classroom. There's this huge auditorium that's there. I was like, whoa, this almost seems like a presentation I would be giving in a lecture hall back at home. Classrooms are beautiful. There's a basketball court outside. And as soon as we got there, I was playing basketball with some of the students. So right away, you can tell that this is very different from the previous schools we went to, and that there was plenty of opportunities for the students and what they can learn there. But nothing changed because the education was still, the hunger for education was still there. So after meeting the principal, Chewy, and then finally having our presentation with the upper grade students, I believe 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th graders, it was a PowerPoint presentation that we were doing. So right away when I was preparing the PowerPoint and thinking about how to connect with the students, because I knew we're going very deep into the microbiology, the science behind hand washing. I was like, one of the biggest things is these students oftentimes before lunch, they don't know what to expect. They don't want, it's a long presentation. They're going to sleep or they're going to stay awake. And I think one of the biggest things that I did to have, as you described, the roof flying off
Yep.
was connect with the students more than anything. So one of the first things that I did is I know that outside of the US, soccer or football is the biggest sport in the world. So the first slide that I had was Cristiano Ronaldo. And I asked the students, who is this? And they all said it like almost mocking, like, that's Cristiano Ronaldo. Like,
Yeah.
and it was a gif of him dancing, doing his goal dance. And I was like, okay, you guys can help me with this. And I was like, one, two, three. And the whole place went, Soo,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's exactly what happens every time he scores a goal. And then after that, I think we were both, the students were locked in, the teacher was locked in, I was locked in, and we were ready to learn about hand hygiene. And they're all ears the whole entire presentation.
Yeah, and in that presentation, because those students have, I'll just call it a better opportunity for science because they've got the labs, they've got, well-paid teachers. You were really able to dig into more of the science with them on a deeper level. And these were older students. These were more senior students. But one of the things I appreciated most about your presentations, Yak, is how you tailored them to age group, how you tailored them to appropriate level of understanding, so that the recipients of that education could really retain it. It was just an awesome experience having you with us in India. I didn't really know what to expect because we had never done a public health education initiative before like this. We'd only begun discussing it recently with our public health advisor, Tracy Itty, who's in Arizona. But man, this was really cool, really worthwhile. And I know that the schools and the teachers and the students, everybody found a lot of value in it. So I just want to thank you from everybody at Be the Change Volunteers because I know you put an enormous amount of work into this. And while I was there, I saw you work very hard every day. It's not easy to go 8 hours talking and then go another 2 hours talking. The travel can be rigorous, and you just kept going the whole way through. I think you achieved a couple of weeks worth of work in a short period of time. So yeah, thank you so much for going to India with us. Thank you for sharing your story with us today. And we're grateful, man. We hope you're going to be traveling with us again soon.
Yep, I 100% will be traveling back soon. And I have a few thank yous to give too. I want to thank you, Raul, Tato, Dr. Cook, and the rest of Be the Change, for working with me and allowing me, to join and lead this public health initiative in India. Also want to give a big shout out and thanks to Tracy. She's helped me a bunch with tailoring those questions. She even asked her family members of the best questions to ask in etiquette and also going through some of the posters that we were able to give. That's a big shout out to Tracy. And then also the last thing that I will leave with is, even though it wasn't easy and it was hard, I always come to find out that like all good things or anything that's worth it is always on the other side of hard. So
Man, yeah, thank you so much. I will talk to you soon. If you like Changer Chats and you'd like to hear more of them, reach out to us at btcv.us. You can show your financial support for projects like those in India by clicking the donate button online. Thanks and be the change.